What is the most disgusting thing you have ever done that you took pleasure in? My wife and I had two wonderful daughters, 13 and 10, and a pretty healthy relationship. At some point things started to appear off. She got very clingy to her phone all of a sudden, made sure to delete the saved password feature on our common PC, stated having phone calls that suddenly ended when I came into the room. You can probably guess what it was. Now having 15 years of marriage behind us, I was hoping it wasn't what it obviously seemed to be. So one day when she told me she was going to spend some time with the girls, I decided to follow her. Sure enough, I find her driving to a hotel to meet with a guy I will call Steve. To say it was a gut punch was an understatement. I literally cried for an hour straight. After I was done with my self-wallowing phase, I decided the best course was getting even. I thought of several scenarios that may or may not have involved me hurting Steve. Eventually I decided to do things more civilly and more importantly legally, but only just. So the first part of the plan was gathering evidence. I could have just gotten a pie, but I had something better in mind. So one day when my wife was at her job and the kids at school, I installed some small secret cameras and microphones I had bought. Due to the setup of our bedroom, I even managed to get one perfectly overlooking the bed. I didn't however use them while I was at home. So a couple of days pass, when I proposed to my wife that the second to next weekend I should take the girls on a trip and stay a night too. I more often than not was the one cooking. I took a far more active role in raising the girls and showed them a lot more patience and attention. She was usually busy working or drinking, so me going alone with the girls on a trip wasn't that weird. So 2 weeks pass, in which time I get my affairs in order and contact a lawyer to write up a separation agreement that would involve me keeping residence in custody. I go on the trip, try to not give anything away to the girls and wait and see if Steve and my wife fall into the trap. When I returned I checked the recordings of the weekend, and sure enough it's a 36-hour fest. When they weren't doing the deed, the dialogue was something even better. I found out that Steve had a wife, but even worse, they also talked about me. And I heard the obvious character assassination that I expected about how small my PP was, an insecurity of mine, how I didn't satisfy her. But there was some really hurtful stuff, like her telling Steve some of my deepest secrets and shameful stories that I had only told her about, just so they could have a laugh. She even told him about my dope story and how I attempted to take my life when I was 16. So at this point I didn't have any doubts on what to do. The next day when the kids left, but before my wife left, I confronted her with the video and told her that either she signs the separation agreement and leaves the house, or the girls are going to receive an in-depth explanation of all the positions in which mommy cheated on daddy. I wasn't gonna do that. Just to be clear, I love my daughters too much, but I put the threat there and she was too emotional to realize my bluff. She went through all the stages, denying everything, trying to bargain, threatening me, and getting angry. I let it go through all that stuff. Eventually she signed the paper and she departed that very evening after she told her goodbyes to the girls. I didn't show or tell the girls anything graphic. I was always very honest with them, which is another reason why I was always the favorite parent, so I just said that mommy had been unfaithful. The younger took some time figuring it out, but that was made up by my older getting mightily upset. She had just gotten her first boyfriend, as I'm not sure the term really applies at that age, but she knew enough of the world to get mad big time. This would be important at a would-be custody battle, as though she did for the moment agree to give over custody. I feared, and I was right to fear, that she would try and fight me for the kids. What I didn't expect was for her to use her visitation rights to talk crap about me. Basically she started telling my younger kid about how it was all my fault for not forgiving her. Her lawyer even started demanding she receive custody. So I finally activated my revenge plan. Enter trip to South Carolina. Why South Carolina? Simple. Fort Sumter. I really wanted my daughters to see it. I definitely did not go there because it is one of the last places where revenge porn isn't illegal, and where I could upload my wife and Steve's doings and intimate moments with no worries on the internet and other such sites, as you cannot be prosecuted for crimes that weren't illegal when and where they were committed. I especially made sure to include the clip where Steve could not get it up. I sent the links to my wife's employer, her clients, and everybody in her line of work just to be sure, to Steve's wife and to his firm. Steve soon got a divorce. I feel sorry for his wife as she was an innocent victim in all of this, but I think it's better that she found out. As for my wife, this was the end of any chance to get custody. She soon got fired from her job of 8 years. I got custody. Yes, due to her being unemployed, I got no alimony, but honestly I make enough money to sustain both me and the girls, so I don't care, and I'm good enough at caring for them and they are old enough to allow me to have a full-time job. Several months later, my wife is still unemployed. Last time I spoke to her wife she threatened to come and take my life and how this will be revenge for ruining hers. What was a sketchy cheap buy that ended up being one of your best purchases? 1. I bought a fake wood mantel clock from Value City for like $10 because I needed something for my first apartment. I received a surprising number of compliments on it and was asked more than once if it was a family heirloom because it looked so old. It also lasted for like 10 years until some movers broke it. I was kind of proud of displaying that stupid cheap clock. 2. One of those square, window-sized box fans. Technically wasn't a purchase. I found it outside the dumpster of my junior year college apartment back in 2008. I'm a fan of airflow and white noise, so that fan ran 24 hours a day for nearly 11 years. Outside of when I was away on vacations and for brief periods in winter, most of that on the lowest setting, but I mean, there were long stretches of literally months plus where it wasn't turned off. It stopped working earlier this year when I can only assume some critical component burned out. I'll miss you, completely free thing that provided me a decade of a light breeze and air circulation. 3. I randomly found a wedding videographer online and booked him for a very affordable rate for my wedding, assuming it wouldn't be very good quality. 2 weeks after the wedding, he emails me a high quality, well-edited video. He had a drone I hadn't noticed because he was outside of the venue getting B-roll with it before I even started getting ready for the big day. I was floored, and now I recommend him to everyone who ever plans to get married ever. 4. Went to a garage sale, little girl was in charge, she's like 12. I don't know anything about turntables, but she has a set on a table. I ask how much, she tells me $20. I ask her if they work, she tells me she has no idea, her dad got new ones and wants to get rid of these. I wait for her dad, she tells me he's sleeping. She says, dude, just take them. I'm like, no, $20 can't be right, maybe $200? She looks at me like I'm stupid. Fine, I'll take them. I drive straight to a resale shop to see what I can get for them, or if they even work. They worked. Dude looks up prices and comes back with a $1,200 offer. Best $20 I ever spent. 5. I went to Mexico a few years back with my family, and it was our first time there. We only left the hotel once because it was so damn hot. On that day, after visiting an ancient temple, we decided to go to a cenote to swim and cool off. We arrived at the bus station, and this kinda sketchy taxi driver approached us and asked where we wanted to go. My father mentioned a very popular cenote, but the taxi driver recommended a quieter place and said he'd do it for half price, even though it was already dirt cheap. For some reason, my father agreed, which I thought was mad, so me and my family got in his taxi and drove off. We were riding down the freeway when he starts indicating left. I see no road where he's indicating. We turn off onto a dirt track and into the jungle. For about 10 minutes, we're getting deeper and deeper into the jungle until we reach a house. My father is told to get out and pay at this small shack, and the rest of us aren't allowed out of the car. 5 minutes pass, and by this time, we were freaking out in the car. I didn't really feel like getting taken or anything, but my father returns, and we continue into the jungle. Soon we reach a clearing with a few people drinking around a table and a couple in swimsuits. Now I'm a bit more relaxed because there are other customers there. After getting changed, we have a short walk to this beautiful, crystal clear cenote with overhangs and plants hanging down. It was amazing. We got out and thought, money well spent. But we were led on a tour around 4 other cenotes where we swam under bats hanging in caves and learned about the history of the cenotes. To top it off, I got to jump off a 10-foot drop into a pool where I could see the bottom about 20 feet below the surface. Best experience we had, and I'd love to go back, but I don't think I've ever been so frightened as I was going down that deserted dirt road. 6. I bought a button-down shirt from the thrift store in the mid-90s that I still wear today. The shirt is obviously even older and it doesn't have much wear on it either. I think it's made of rayon and something else. The brand is Kmart. They don't make them like they used to. 7. We bought an Ellis Island boat tour in New York from one of the guys on the streets. We were led into a van and treated extremely well, so we weren't immediately sketched out too bad. We didn't know New York, so we ended up driving 20 minutes through Manhattan by 3 men to an apparently abandoned sketchy dock with no one there. That's when we were convinced we were being scammed. They gave us a post-it note with a number, and they said to go around the abandoned factory to the pier, and they were waiting for us. So we took our naive tourist selves around the building alone, expecting nothing and that they would just pull off and scam us. Sure enough, we turned the corner, and there was a big boat with a bunch of people, and it was legit. We had an amazing tour and a lot of fun with free food and drinks. 8. At the end of a long road trip with some friends, I bought a $20 pair of sunglasses in a gas station just outside Chicago. They fit me better than any pair of sunglasses ever did, or ever will, and they made me look awesome. For years, I constantly received compliments about them and was asked where I got them. I lost them after 5 long years and have hated myself for it ever since. They were so no-name they didn't even have a brand name on them at all, so I have no idea who made them. I have no way of finding that gas station either. I've literally spent hundreds of dollars trying to find sunglasses that come close to that same perfect fit/style, but I can't. 9. I risked a huge box of magic cards. I spent around $200, and it easily came out around $2,000 to $3,000. This box was just a random pickup on the internet from Craigslist. 10. Seed packets from the dollar store. While in college, my boyfriend and I were broke. Really broke. But I still wanted to do something to celebrate spring. We were getting a few cheap things at the dollar store when I noticed they were selling these seed packets from a big old bin that you had to dig through. 4 for $1. No tax. I immediately begged to buy one despite our strict budget. Boyfriend was incredulous I'd want to buy sketchy seeds but dutifully handed me a quarter. I ended up picking out tomatoes. Well, we got home, and I carefully placed about 3 seeds in washed out cans. I watered them and watched them sprout. I love tending to my little garden. I ended up with 3 beautiful, huge tomato plants. It was a bumper crop. More than we could eat. I sold the extra produce to my classmates and made like $25. Good seeds.
PP is too big and I hate it. My PP is so large I just cannot lug it around any longer. It is so insanely huge and has caused so many problems in my life. I cannot go to airports as they think I'm sneaking something in. So every time I go, I get touched as they try to take my PP off thinking it's a bomb. I cannot pleasure women as they are so horrified at the sight of my PP, that they immediately run away. My mother and father disown me after seeing the length of my shaft. Not only is it extraordinarily long, it is just too thick. I cannot relieve myself as my hands are just too small to choke the chicken. My humongous PP has ruined my life. I resent God for cursing me with this large chunk of meat that just drags across the ground. Doctors tell me I will never be able to get a PP reduction as they would have nowhere to put the PP. It would just take up far too much room. I had a girlfriend when I was a young lad. She loved me for who I was and did not care for this deformity, but one day, I took off my jeans and my PP flung out, smacking her and flinging her out the window. She died 2 hours later in the hospital. She was the only woman who ever loved me. My PP is just too ginormous. It has caused problems for myself and the people around me. For this reason, I will be ending it all. My P has taken over my life. But it cannot take over a life that does not exist.
Our school teacher was a huge racist. So we rebelled. When we returned to school for the new school year, it wasn't long until the gossip started to spread around school that there were a few new teachers. A French teacher, a science teacher, a history teacher and a maths teacher. It wasn't long before the gossip mill started focusing on the maths teacher, due to him being an entitled piece of crap. The gossip started out that he would expect 7th grade students to understand university-level mathematics and would say that if you cannot understand that much at this age then you wouldn't get anywhere in life. Pretty soon, the gossip turned to the teacher being prejudiced. Sure, there was some prejudice in the school between students at the time, but that was mild compared to what this teacher started doing. During class registration, the teacher would skip asking if black kids were in class, or ask if the kid is there, look at the kid, then mark the kid absent. I even saw the teacher refuse entry to an Asian student and told her that she's not his student and that there's no point in him teaching her. Even other students that were not obviously of foreign descent were demeaned. Stuff like when a student would ask a question he would just sigh and tell him or her that there's no point in answering that question because they wouldn't learn anything from the answer. As the teacher started settling into his job, or lack of it, complaints rolled into the main office. However, nothing happened to discipline the teacher. Several students even said that when they went to the reception desk to hand in a complaints form, they watched as the receptionist would lay it onto a large pile of what looked like other complaints forms. There was the sound of a shredder going on in plain sight. After a month of complaints and nothing happening, the entire school population was getting fed up. Even the school bullies were shocked at what was happening and were siding with the other students. They even put a hold on bullying their victims. Then all of a sudden, the entire student population rallied. At first it was a boycott on going to this nightmare teacher's lessons. When the headmaster asked why students weren't going to his lessons and was told why, he wasn't fazed. When nightmare teacher was asked why his students were not going to his lessons, his response was something along the lines of, they're just idiots that don't want to learn. No point trying to teach them. After another week of boycotting his lessons and nothing happening, the rest of the maths lessons started getting boycotted. This resulted in the other maths teachers asking the nightmare teacher to teach properly but were shrugged off, blaming the students again. After several more days, us students simply raided the nightmare teacher's classroom and moved chairs into other classes where we continued our education the best that we could. Then the nightmare teacher was assigned to patrol during break times. His entitlement and pure prejudice showed yet again. We had a fenced area which we called the tennis courts, but were basically a multi-purpose area for physics education. Well, if some students brought a ball so they could have a quick game of 5A-side football and the teacher saw that certain students were playing, then he'd kick them off the courts with threats of detention, while saying that they're stealing British sport. Or when students were lined up for the cafeteria he would move foreign descents to the back of the lines and refuse entry to every student until they moved. Then all of a sudden, at the end of one day, there was a crowd in the staff car park. The next morning, the gossip about the nightmare teacher is that every tire on his car was deflated. Not slashed, just that every tire let down. Must have taken him ages to pump them back up. However, this resulted in a report going around the school that the vandals will be caught and punished. However, how could they do that? Even though there were CCTV cameras watching the area, how can black and white video pick out certain students in a sea of 200 plus students in the exact same school uniform? Well, the nightmare teacher mainly accused foreign descents of doing that, but the student gossip quietly spread that it was actually the bullies that did it. None of the students were going to rat them out to the staff. Well, the teacher didn't slow down in blaming certain students and telling others that they're idiots that won't have a future. A few days later, there was a request going around quietly that students return to school for 6 p.m. for something fun. The day after, the nightmare teacher returned to his car, smiled when he saw that his tires were fine and climbed in. However, what's the biggest butterfly effect you've ever experienced? About 15 years ago I was at home watching a movie when a thunderstorm hit my area and shut off my internet. I knew the internet would be out for at least a few hours, and so I started digging through my CD collection to find something to watch. I ended up settling on a recording of a show about a guy in Australia who fed the homeless, and at the end of the first episode they interviewed a few of the homeless people. Their names flashed up at the bottom of the screen as they were being interviewed, and when the third man started getting interviewed, I had to double take and rub my eyes in disbelief. This man had the same name as my long-lost brother who I hadn't seen in 20 years. The more I inspected his features, the more sure I became that this was my little brother who we lost in a flood all those years ago. I called the TV program as soon as the power went back on and got in touch with the guy, and he managed to track down my brother and passed on my phone number. A couple of days after I made the original call, I got a call from my little brother. I couldn't believe it. I started crying as soon as I heard his voice. I told him I was buying him a plane ticket to come live with me right now, and if he refused I swore I'd fly over there and get his butt on that plane myself. He chuckled and agreed. He was on a flight to me that very same day, and I went to pick him up from the airport the next morning. You'd think the butterfly effect ends here, but no, far from it. I picked him up from the airport in the morning and we embraced, but while driving back to my place I had to take a detour because the road was being worked on. Well, while taking this other route we stopped at a cafe to get him some breakfast, and he picked up a local newspaper to catch up on what was happening back at home. Well, in that newspaper, someone was advertising a job for English teachers in China. He asked me what I thought, and, because the only thing he knew how to do in this world was speak English, I told him to go for it. And so not even a week after coming into my home, he moved to China. And he absolutely loved it. So much so that he kept telling me to move there too. I wasn't persuaded at first, but when the recession hit and I lost my job, I figured I had nothing to lose. I sold absolutely everything I owned and moved over there. I ended up meeting my wife in China and having 2 beautiful kids with her, and my brother and I made a vow to never lose each other again. To this day, he is the best damn uncle my kids could have, and I still can't believe it all started with my internet going out.